Wynton Marsalis, how are you doing?
All right, man, it's a pleasure. Rap with you. Great. You all right?
I'm doing all right. I'm pinching myself a little bit because you've been such a powerful inspiration to me, and you were an inspiration to my dad. So the story goes that my dad was driving. I'm not sure where he was going, but he heard you on the radio, and this would have been back in '87. He heard you on the radio, and he literally pulled the car over to the side of the road so that he could focus on what he was hearing, because it was so so otherworldly.
Oh,
And then when they said who it was, he drove right to the store to pick a record up.
oh man.
And his opinion of you, in particular, of your ability to play both sides of the instrument, classical and jazz, at the level that you do, was a cornerstone of the way that he taught me.
Oh man.
And
Wow.
another thing, another thing about that, you have told the story about your practicing. What was it? A period of 7 years without missing a single day for at least 5 hours.
Yeah, I was serious when I started. I practiced a lot. I was dedicated, to it.
And I'm looking at I'm looking at all of the things that you've accomplished in your career. This ridiculous list of honorary degrees, honorary doctorates, and it seems like that practicing paid off.
I don't know. I'm like you. A lot of stuff I feel like happened for me just connected to my daddy. Because he struggled. So he gave me the opportunity to be serious, and just watching him helped me a lot. But it doesn't help me with my kids. I was talking about with my man, the physicist Sean Carroll, and we was talking about what happens with the universe and all these lofty ideas. And I said, well, what about the practical application of this? He said, it doesn't help me get along with my sister. But yeah, my daddy, I was lucky to be around them growing up. Just see them, how serious they were,
Yeah, and may he rest in peace.
Yeah,
I was fortunate to have the opportunity to interact with him a couple years ago when he came to Ohio State, where I teach, and such profound words. He did a master class and performed, and just and talking to him with all the knowledge. Very generous, and just was definitely a highlight of my life.
Oh man, thank you. He's a good dude.
Yeah. So, okay, so I'm just going to jump right in. We'll kind of go different directions. We're going to improvise, right?
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So, I sent you a text message, let's see here, maybe it was a couple weeks ago, maybe it was a week and a half ago or something, because I wanted to give you, some encouragement. You signed that Harper's letter, and which I totally agree with, and I think was, it's unimpeachable, totally what that letter should say. I would have signed it, Can you talk a little bit about the letter, maybe for folks that don't know what the letter was?
Well, I mean, the letter was just saying that we need to try to create an environment where everybody can speak and express their points of view, and that we shouldn't be so harsh on people that they can't speak to each other. The letter itself was innocuous, you know, and I signed it because of the black conservatives who were on there. You know, John McWhorter and Coleman Hughes is a trombone player, is a young guy who fantastic trombone player, went to Juilliard for a year, ended up in Columbia, and he expresses very conservative views all the time, and I don't share the views. My views are really opposed to their views, John and Coleman. Then they weren't even mentioned in most of what the firestorm was about. And I'm also not a person who's on social media, so I've experienced a lot of this kind of tsunami of opinion. And you just have to, when it's like I'm afraid to fly. So I'm always talking with pilots. And the pilot said, look, man, he said, let me tell you, the one mistake you can make as a pilot. The mistake you can make is you can see a storm and it's not something that you didn't know and you didn't see was there, and you think, well, I'm just gonna fly through this. He said, go around it, go above it, or go underneath it. He said, because if you go to that same spot, an hour later, you don't have any problem. So, you know, I mean, a lot of it, whatever people are saying, I don't know. I don't follow all of that, but I still don't know what a lot of it is, man. I'm not in those kind of liberal circles where they're attacking each other, and I don't know. It's old arguments they have, and it's literary people and writers. And so far as people in their sexuality, you know, I mean, I've always been for everything I've ever said is for ultimate freedom and equality for everybody. So
right.
I don't know how I get dragged into all this kind of positions people have and what everybody on the letter signed and what they did and what they said. I mean, at that point, it's like Joe McCarthy or something. I mean, you know, but I'm not online, so I don't take offense to that also. Like, I'm not mad at people for expressing their opinion and their point of view. And okay, that's what you have to say. I'm not angry about them expressing themselves.
Yeah, you know, the cancel culture thing, especially as an artist, seems to be like a really kind of debilitating and crippling kind of, you know, and I have friends that have a lot of different opinions, you know, positions different than the ones that I have, and it's never has occurred to me to, you know, unfriend them or, you know, you know.
But you know, I'm not on Facebook. Like I'm literally about to be 60. I didn't grow up with like the technology, and I mean, I just don't. I don't follow it. I learned lessons on social media earlier because it's not really my thing. Once I wrote an article years ago, this man maybe, I don't know, 12 years ago, about Michael Jackson. And I was saying things, you just say stuff that you feel is true. And man, people, you know, exploded over it. And then some people I noticed, and then also some people who are friends of mine with mental illness, I would read what they said too. It was very incendiary. And because I grew up with a brother that was autistic, I don't take mental illness to be a joke. Like, it's serious to me. And some of the people I knew struggled mentally, man, some of the stuff they wrote was just, the level of just kind of venom and anger. And I also feel like with social media in this time, because it's anonymous, anybody could have been paying people to get online and do that. Man, I don't know. I don't get it. Whatever. I have to keep, because I'm not on my terrain, you know. I'm not going to be answering people. And, you know, as you know, right, down through the years, I have opinions a lot of people don't agree with. Like things I've said about rap music makes people mad. Things I've said about racism down through the years has made people mad. It's their right to get mad. It's their right to express a counter position and point of view. And I applaud that right.
And it's also your right. And it's also your right to be able to express those views.
Yeah. And, you know, I express them and I take what comes.
I trust that you've enjoyed the video so far. please subscribe, comment, share, like. And also, you can go over to my Patreon. The link is in the description if you'd like to further support. Thank you. Now back to the video.
And I take what comes with them. And I'm also not young. I've been expressing views that were unpopular since 1980. Dizzy Gillespie told me an article I did in 1980. He pointed at it and he said, I said, oh, man. Oh. He said, no. There's a lot of truth in here. He said, but be ready for the return. It might not ever stop. And, you know, I mean, at this point, I'm not up enough on, like, what's popular. And I don't even know what cancel culture is. Like, I'm not a part of it. So I don't actually follow it. And God bless them. I'm not mad at nobody.
Yeah.
I'm really not. I mean, I don't. Okay.
So
we going down the road. Like we still gotta get better, still play better, study, read, teach, be for real. I'm going, you know.
Well, let's talk about you. You're just talking about getting better, playing better. So, as much music as you've played, at the level that you've played at, what is it that you practice?
Mainly, I'm trying to just get better at hearing wider intervals right now. Okay. So I'm trying to hear wider intervals. I'm trying to learn more music. Like I was looking at the thing on Paul Robeson, where it was a documentary on him. I think it's called Here I Stand. And he went through what he thought about folk songs. Man, he started naming folk, talking about things that were related to Bach chorales before the Germanic tradition. A song he sang in Swahili. And these were like his objectives in the 1930s. So I was thinking, well, how many songs do I know? Swahili songs do I know? How many Celtic songs can I sing? How much do I? So, you know, I try to work on just expanding my knowledge and understand things better. Like today, I'm doing classes next week on listening, but it's for beginners, all level students. So it's forcing me to just go back through just rudiments of listening. So I try to improve, of course, my playing. Now I'm trying to hear wider intervals and do things that involve different kind of intervals. But I also always working on time and rhythm and understanding, just trying to develop a better, more holistic understanding of music.
You know, I think the first time we met was it was through Rodney Whitaker, and you were at Michigan State, and you had the Lincoln Center Band there, and I played a little bit, and you heard me, and you were very kind, and we had some interaction there, and we had it was a very deep conversation, one that I remember. I mean, I remember like it was yesterday, and we were talking about Coltrane, and we were talking about, you know, playing the blues, and one comment that you made about how when Charlie Parker, when he was really leaning in to really get that little extra or really trying to climax, he would simplify what it was that he was playing, and it was less technical. Yeah. And that really stayed with me. Was a big moment for me. And then maybe a year later, or maybe a couple years later, you came back to Michigan State to play at a club, and Rodney set it up so that I could come and play a couple tunes, and we played Green Chimneys and Cherokee. So now I had heard you play Cherokee, you know, on recordings and things before, and I was somewhat prepared, but you know, you did that thing where you circular breathe, and you were playing, you know, the stream of notes at, I don't know, it was 360 or something, and for like 4 courses straight, and then I played my little stuff or whatever.
Oh man, you was playing. Don't say that.
Oh, thank you.
He was playing, man. I remember that. That was a while ago too, man. That's like,
I was in my 20s. I'm 45 now, and it was like early to mid 20s.
Yeah.
And I just remembered thinking to myself, you know what? The next time I get a chance to play with Wynton, I'm going to have something. So I worked out all of this circular breathing stuff, right? So if we play Cherokee again, I got something for you.
We better do it. We better do it next time we see each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man.
That would be beautiful.
Yeah. I remember that gig.
Yeah, that was a big moment for me. And you were very generous. Conversations that we had. You're like the baddest. You're like the greatest musician. But you could have done any number of other things. And I'm looking at a lot of the things that you've done. Your speaking skills, your presentation skills are. I can't think of someone that I think. You're just such a terrific presenter, and that was something. I think I even talked to you about that. I asked you some questions about, what do you do to prepare, and what are some things that you're thinking about when you're presenting. Maybe you can remind me of your answer.
No, I don't. I have outline, but I grew up with my daddy presenting gigs. He talked on his gigs. And a lot of times there wasn't a lot of people at his gigs, but he always introduced tunes. And I saw too, a lot of the cats like Sweet Edison. I always loved this presentation. I was in high school, even though they were older than me. And I grew up playing in funk bands. We always introducing tunes. And it's just, have an outline, be ready. And then I'm always, every night I'm on a gig, I was talking. And after gigs, I would always meet people and talk and, be with people and check them out. And over the years, I just learned to have a basic feel for it. And I think that's why I don't go up and down like that or be, I believe in like fundamental of practice and have respect for people. Also say, I'm sorry, or I was wrong, or, you get to a certain age, man, you're dealing with your kids and they're adults. You just, man, your parents die, you know what I mean? You got things, you're looking at things a different way, like you. And so for me, it just, some kind of talents and abilities I would have. I try to develop them and be around professional people and see how they do. And just have the humility to learn from them. Great Ed Bradley was my man for many years. I always would write a script for this guy, and Ed would read it. He would always say, who wrote this shit? And then, it would be me, of course. So I would be like me. He'd be like, this is the worst. He was like, I keep telling you, something can look good and read good in your mind and be terrible when you speak it. And, on and on, like, but it was always love, it was like having like an uncle or something. And, I've been just very lucky with my environment. And,
yeah, you're talking about kids, dealing with your kids. I have my son is 6.
Just wait.
Yeah.
You got to be grown. The lessons they got to teach you don't have until they get over 25.
Oh, right.
He's a baby. Yeah, don't worry. Enjoy it.
Well, and it's like the greatest thing, But it also makes me realize how strange I was as a 6-year-old, because all I wanted to do was, play my instrument. I started when I was 6.
Yeah, you were strange.
Yeah. because he definitely. I mean, you know, there's instruments around here, there's a set of drums, and
Right.
I bought him a trumpet, and let's see here, he's got a guitar. You know, and every once in a while he'll say, "Hey, you know, Daddy, can you give me a lesson?" But really, what he means is he wants to come downstairs and sit on my lap, you know,
Right.
and hang out with me, right?
Right.
And he's very, you know, he's a rough and tumble kid. You know, a lot of acrobatics, a lot of flipping around, a lot of tackling. You know, loves football. You know, football and was always asking to ride his bike and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, when you were young, so first of all, how old were you when you started playing?
I started playing when I was 6. But unlike you, I didn't want to play, you know. I mainly played ball. I played basketball, football, baseball. That's what we did in New Orleans, Louisiana. That's all I mainly did. And I didn't get serious about playing until I was 12. Then I started to practice. But before that, I never really practiced. I played like parades and, you know, little stuff. Like in New Orleans, we play the music as more part of the culture then. But I wasn't into it like that.
And what happened that sort of turned the switch on?
You know, I was at a basketball practice, man, and I was just thinking, I don't know if I want to just do this for my whole life. Like, you know, something about it. I mean, I was dedicated to work on my game. I was kind of serious. And then I listened to Train. Like in one summer, I started listening to Coltrane because I know my daddy had a picture of him, the New Orleans drummer James Black, and they was standing up in a picture with Coltrane. And I always would look at that picture, and I know they loved Train. They was always talking about Train. So when I started to listen to Train had come to New Orleans, I don't know, 1962 or 63, played at a club called Vernon's. And it was like, you know, in the New Orleans lore, the people didn't really like what Train was playing. They wanted Train to play my favorite things, and Train going into another way of playing. And how much my daddy loved Train, and people was telling everybody, oh, Train and them ain't playing. And my daddy said when he finally got off to go hear Train, he was like, damn, if they ain't playing, ain't no such thing as playing. He said Train and them was playing. And so when I started to listen to Train, even though I'm a trumpet player, it got me into music. And I read a couple of books with Train, Black Music and Black Nationalism. There's a book by a guy named Kofsky. I remember reading it because they had Train on the cover of it. And then when they got to Train said the opposite of what the book was about. I just laughed. I was young, so I didn't really know. But I said, man, this book is about nationalism. And Coltrane said he don't believe in it. I said, okay. They put him on the cover of the book. You know, it's absurd. So he put Train on the cover, and Train said, this is not endorse this. And then I got into Train. Then from Train, I got into Miles. And my daddy wrote out the solo for Miles played on Someday My Prince Will Come. But he told me, learn it by ear. You know, don't learn stuff by looking at the music. And then in New Orleans, we learned everything by ear anyway. You know, I was playing the funk band. We was only learning music off the record. And, you know, then I got into the music. At 12, 13, I wanted to learn how to play.
And when did you know that music was going to be your life? That you were going to, I mean, okay, you know, I'm playing an instrument. This is cool, but okay, now this is serious. This is what's going to happen.
You know, I was dedicated to it, so I practiced a lot. I didn't know because I always saw my daddy struggling. So I mean, I didn't know whether you could make money doing it, and I wanted to be able to play. I mean, I didn't want to try to be like a star or none of that. I just wanted to play. I basically just wanted them to respect my playing. You know, I figured if Clark Terry or somebody who really could play felt like I could play, because I mean I knew I couldn't play, so I was trying to figure out if I could learn how to play. And when I graduated from high school, my teachers was all saying, "Oh, you're gonna waste your brain on music," because they didn't respect music. You know, the South culture is football. And my mama was like, you know, your daddy struggled his whole life with all these kids. He ain't making no money. I don't know. If I was you, I wouldn't go into music. So I asked my daddy, man, you think I should go into music? He said, man, don't have nothing to fall back on. Because if you have something to fall back on, you ain't gonna make it doing this. So I took it like a challenge, you know. I always teased my daddy. I've messed with him my whole life. Because he was always real serious, man. He talked for a long time to be serious. But I always joked and clown with him. That was my relationship with him. He told me some of the most serious thing in the world, and I'll say something stupid. And, you know, because I was a kid, always on gigs with him, I could feel him, you know, he playing, nobody really there. He believed in the music. And I would just mess with him, tease him about, man, ain't nobody at your gig. And, you know, we got more people at our gigs than yours. And we sad, and you can play, we making more money than you. You know, I'd be messing with him. And he was so secure in himself. None of that, man, it didn't faze him. He just laughed. Even through all the years, he called me once I was in my 40s, man. It's something he heard me play. He heard a record of something. He didn't like the way I sounded. And he said, hey, man, I just heard you playing on whatever the song was. He said, I heard you playing on this song. He said, you ain't learned how to play on changes yet? So, you know, he was always, man. Then when he told me there was nothing to fall back on, then I said, okay, I'm gonna try to make it. I didn't know I could even learn to play jazz. I was lucky to play with Art Blakey. And that gave me the opportunity to learn, because there was not a lot of places hiring 17, 18-year-old people. You know, you was gonna have a hard time learning. But Art gave me that opportunity. And then I could go on the path to start to learn how to play.
So, so I read somewhere that when you went to Juilliard, that your focus was classical trumpet.
Well, Juilliard was only classical music.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I had studied and played classical music, and I wanted to get out of New Orleans, man. So I had practiced my audition so hard. I knew my whole audition from memory. It was like 30 excerpts or something. I wanted to leave home because I thought the North would be better than the South, you know. I wanted to get out of the South. I didn't have a good time with a lot of the stuff. And then yeah, I came up, and that's what was going on at Juilliard. We only play classical music. And I love classical music, but I wanted to try to be like my daddy and them, you know. But the question for me was, can you do that? Can you learn how to play? I mean, I knew I didn't want to play funk. I had played funk in a funk band from 12 to 16. I mean, I played so many funk gigs. That's not what I wanted to do. I was wondering if I could play jazz. And, you know, Juilliard gave me the opportunity to come to New York and to play. I met a lot of great students, too, and played. I mean, the orchestra's fantastic. And to be around that many talented students and people who were serious, man, that was the education in itself. But you know, at that time, I wanted to play the music. Then I met Lou Soloff and John Faddis. And then the other music, I would go out every night in New York. I met like everybody, whoever, Mickey Bass was playing. I played some Afro-Latin gigs. I was playing gigs anywhere. A guy named Wilmer Wise was my man. He was like a black classical trumpet player who had struggled through the 1950s and 60s, you know, with no gigs, and 60s and 70s. And Wilmer just looked out for me, man, like I was his son. So I was playing Sweeney Todd on Broadway because of Wilmer. I played with the Brooklyn Philharmonic because of Wilmer. And Wilmer took care of me. You know, he passed away now, but he played on Weather Report's record, I Sing the Body Electric. He played piccolo trumpet on it. And I loved him, man, you know. So like that, I just started to work gigs. I was teaching at a school in the South Bronx. I can't remember the name of the school for nothing. I would just get the train and go teach, and I was playing some gigs with Larry Harlow. We did some recording sessions. And Lou would throw me some gigs too. I played with a fusion band called French Toast. I played a few gigs with them. Peter Gordon's French horn player. I played some studio gigs, a few little things. I played whatever there was. I would go to all the clubs, like 7th Avenue South. The Brecker Brothers had a club. And eventually, Michael and Randy, we stayed in their club, man. Me and Branford, it was like deep how they made it possible for us to play. Even though we were young, we played a gig in the club, 7th Avenue South. We played there one New Year's Eve, wasn't nobody in the club. One couple came in, and the lady was real sweet. And she said, well, one day when y'all are famous, we're gonna see y'all and remember that we were the only couple who came to see y'all this New Year. It was like 1981, maybe 80, yeah, probably 81, 82. It was 82. Anyway, I know I went into a long thing, but I'm just.
Oh no! Hey, you could keep talking, man. I mean, this is all gold.
No, I'm just telling you just how it was, just back then.
So I was, let's see here. I think it was on, maybe it was on Instagram. No, maybe it was on YouTube. On your YouTube channel, you did a like a Lou Soloff.
Oh yeah, man, yeah. Yeah, we all talking about Lou.
Yeah, I watched that whole thing. That was.
Look, I'm looking at that shofar I was playing with Lou. I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna get this shofar. I told you there was one story where me and him came to my house with a shofar, and I said, "Man, I got a shofar. I played it to open the synagogue on Lexington Avenue. This my shofar right here."
Ha.
So he started playing his shofar. Man, I ain't played mine in so long. I can't even get a sound out of it. My mouthpiece, I gotta, the mouthpiece is so small. But we started playing these shofars, and we sat up there and played, man, 25, 30 minutes, I don't know how long, just trading phrases and playing the blues. Then he looked at me and said, well, what are we doing? Then we both started laughing. But yeah, I love Lou, all the trumpet players, man. If you play trumpet, you had to love him. He was such a good dude. He loved the music. He loved our instrument. He loved musicians. He loved hearing people play. He played with my first band before me. I asked him, man, could you play with this band with Jeff Watts playing drums and Kenny Kirkland on the piano and my brother Branford? Could you hire them on a gig? And Lou hired them. And he played a gig with them. He called me and said, man, these guys can play. Lou was, he was a good man.
Yeah, that was a great. I mean, folks that are watching, you should go to Wynton's YouTube channel and check that out. That was really great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're. Yeah.
Man, I need to practice it. Whew. I got to figure out how to get my sound together with my shofar.
So when you were coming up and you got into that stretch when you were really serious about it, can you describe what your practice routine was like?
Oh yeah, I'll never forget that. Let me tell you something. I'll remember that schedule till the day I died.
Yeah.
Well, first I would get up at 6:30. So I start practicing. I practice from 7 to 8, then I would go to school. Then I would be at school, taking my classes. And then I practice through my lunch. That'd be like another hour. So I'd be in practice 2 hours. Then after school, I practice another hour. That'd be 3 hours. Then if I had rehearsal, and generally, I had a rehearsal. On Monday was a civic orchestra rehearsal. On Tuesday night was what was called the community band. It was like a concert band of older band directors and things like that. On Wednesday night, we had our dance rehearsal for our funk band. We had our routines. We'd be dancing stuff. Thursday, we had gigs. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, almost all the weeks. From the time I was in 8th grade till I was a junior, I played 4 gigs a week. Mainly we're playing funk gigs. But then I had a gig on a Wednesday night at a jazz club called Tyler's Beer Gardens after I was a sophomore in high school. And we would play like tunes. I was always lost on the tunes, man. Chick Corea tune like Letha or something like Freedom Jazz Dance. It's the 70s, so we playing that kind of 1970s vocabulary. And it was all cats in college and me. And I mean, they looked out for me. A little older than me, Mike Valera and Ricky Sebastian played drums. And it was the opposite of funk. You know, we were playing jazz. It was mainly white college kids would come to this place, and white musicians. Funk was all black. So everything was segregated. You know, very little was integrated at that time. And yeah, I kept my schedule, you know, and I would practice simple things in the beginning, and it just become more complex as the day went on. And I played in a lot of different ensembles. I played in the youth New Orleans Civic Youth Orchestra. I played in the Civic Orchestra. I played in the community band. I played some extra trumpet sometimes if the New Orleans Philharmonic needs somebody I would play. I played things like the Circus. I played the Bob Hope Show. All this was when I was in high school. Because one good thing about being in New Orleans, if I'd been in New York, I would have never played any of that. You know, I played in churches, the Messiah, the Magnificat. Once I got a piccolo trumpet, people called me for all those kind of gigs. So I ended up getting a lot of experience playing. And I played, you know, parades and things in the community, all kind of funk gigs at late hours, Caesar's East, gigs in the Absinthe Bar, kind of jazz, blues type of gigs. I even played a burlesque show once. I mean, all kind of stuff, man. But it was like old poor broke down burlesque show with a couple of girls dancing and me and the drummer playing little melodies.
Now, in your career, in your jazz career, there came a point when it seemed that you were becoming a lot more influential. Influenced by like Louis Armstrong and earlier jazz. Can you talk a little bit about that and what was going on in your head that caused that shift?
Well, you know, I was always ignorant of the history and tradition. And just being like my generation, influenced by writers, you know, and all this kind of reading stuff for people who don't know about the music, trying to take you away from the identity of it, not in the past or the future, because a lot of the elements of what they were writing had more to do with whether something had a black type of vibe to it or not. So I knew I could see underneath it, but when you don't know nothing, just because you can see something don't mean you can do anything about it. And my daddy had taught the history of jazz, and he was always telling me, man, you need to listen to Pops, you need to listen to Pops. But, you know, we didn't like Pops in my generation, man. We had our afros, and, you know, Malcolm X, Martin. Then you got a dude from the minstrel era. It didn't go down. So I never listened to Pops. But then when I was 18, my daddy sent me a cassette tape of Pops. Then we had cassettes. I had a boom box, you know, it was one thing I had when I left home. He said, man, listen to, learn one of these Pop solos. You know, I was used to trying to learn Freddie Hubbard solos, like on the Intrepid Fox and stuff like that. So I'm Pops, I'm thinking, man, you know, Pop old timey. So I put the solo on to Jubilee. Man, I could not play that solo. I said, damn, how am I gonna let some old timey music like that? I can't play it. So then, I worked on it. And I realized just how much endurance Pops had. And I understood what the things Pops was doing that I had no chance of doing. The weight of Pops' sound, the expressiveness of his sound, the way he played with rhythm, the diversity of the rhythms, the kind of logic that he played with, the brilliance he played, the high notes, all the things I was observing. I said, I wonder why we stop playing like with this kind of vibe. So, you know, I start to think, because you got to remember, for me, my generation, we were playing funk anyway. So I wasn't looking at the distance between me and Miles was just as great as the distance between me and Pops. People weren't playing that way. So then I started listening to Pops and learning like the hot 5 and the hot 7. So I figured from the time I was like 18, 19, 20, 21, I still wasn't playing that kind of music, but I was listening to it and trying to learn it. Then I was playing old wild music we were playing, you know, kind of chromatic. Everybody saying, oh, they sound like Miles Band from the 60s. We were trying to play like Miles Band from the 60s, Trains Band, Mingus. But I was still listening to Pops. And because I knew Sweet Edison and I loved him, he was always talking about Basie in the 1930s. I didn't listen to music from that time period. And I started to figure, what would it take for me to be sophisticated enough to actually know about the music? And at that point, I met Al Murray, and he would always tease me. And he would always say, well, you got the integrity to stand up to everything that's going on, but you don't know nothing. So if it came down to you representing the music, you don't even know whole periods of the music. You can't even identify it. And I couldn't argue with him. He was right. So all through my 20s, even now, I mean, I still always trying to increase my knowledge and understanding. But I think that's what started me on the path of not embracing ignorance as a way forward. And it's still most people in the kind of jazz environment, because it's dominated by kind of critics that want to push it in the direction of European art music. Most people still embrace like that kind of viewpoint of the music, like it has to imitate the trajectory of European classical music. But it doesn't have to do that, because it has a heavy traditional element in it that comes from African consciousness and music, and a spiritual element that doesn't have anything to do with how abstract you can play. Because the abstraction is also in how you come together with other people. The abstraction is also in your sound, and the abstraction is also in the choices you make when you improvise. Now, the abstraction is in the interlocking of parts. So, you know, when I start to realize how holistic the philosophy was of jazz, but also how difficult it would be to understand it if you did not have a kind of a type of non-Western philosophical base with a Western base. Like, you couldn't discard the Western base, but you had to add to it the non-Western. And most times when people understand the depth of non-Western thinking, they want to discard Western thinking. But you can't play jazz if you discard that. So you have to keep both of them. And because I was from New Orleans and we have such an African presence and we're so proud of it, you know, I was able to construct a much stronger philosophical base. It, of course, did not sway all the people who were writing and talking about the music. There's no way for them to know that. It's just too much information. But I understood that then I needed to not run from the ancestors, but embrace them. And that their strength was not a weakness of mine. And that their strength could be used as a platform to build. And I also saw my father in that way. So it helped me. I didn't have to go through the thing of, in Western mythology, it's a whole thing of Saturn eating his children and the father wanting to kill the kids and the kid having to overcome the father. That's not a prevalent thing in African philosophical belief. So I never had that toward my father, you know. I always had like a kind of veneration and a respect. And he was always the one who was saying, play in the funk band, do this or do that. He was not a person who believed in, and you got to recreate the past. He was too much of a jazz musician. He knew you couldn't do it. But he also was philosophical enough to understand when I started to explain to him what we needed to do in a certain generation to build that bridge. Now, the musicians still don't want to walk over that bridge. And I understand that, because it's very hard to leave the plantation. You know, it's difficult. So I'm not mad at anybody because they want to stay on the plantation. But I just want to make sure that the bridge is there, because there's welcome for all of the musicians. It's like what Coltrane said in that Black Nationalist book, made me laugh all the years ago. This music is for everybody, you know. And now that the DNA is telling us everybody is African, you don't have to be divorced from Africa. It's not necessary for you to denigrate them or to. It's a big place with a lot of different people, and it's the fault of a lot of creativity, and it's not a thing that had to be at odds with the West, though the West was at odds with it. We don't have to have that type of posture, and I don't have it, and I did not have it. So it enabled me to learn a lot more about music and bring another perspective with a lot of confidence. Now, a lot of that perspective has been avoided because who's going to talk about it? It's not possible for the critical establishment we have. They're not equipped to talk about that kind of thing because that's not what they're interested in. You know, they're interested in the kind of, they're interested in making sure that the Beatles remain the top band in American music. And as long as they can do that, everything falls in underneath that. That was never my objective, to fall in underneath that worldview. So it still creates problems in that paradigm. But now with the younger people who are coming up, they know so little about any kind of music that whatever that was is no longer important. That's not their fault, because now it's another whole thing that they're listening to. They're listening to very creative products made many times by non-musicians who, because they're not musicians, they actually can create a product that's stronger than a musician with no integrity. So I always tell my younger students, don't think a non-musician is bad, because they create musical kind of art products that require more charisma and taste, and they come up with a lot of creative things that a musician would not come up with, because that musician is limited by the knowledge of music.
Mm.
You know, as a musician, you know what I mean. It's things
I know
you're
exactly
not
what you mean.
consider because you're a musician. But a non-musician would be like, okay, I don't know the harmony. This sounds good together. And it'll be something that you'll be like, damn, what is that?
It's as if you can create a cage. The rules create a cage of your own making.
Well, yeah, the knowledge is a cage, even if you ever open-minded. Because your knowledge base, whatever it is, keeps you from perceiving as someone who has no knowledge. And someone with no knowledge is going to figure out something that a person with knowledge will not figure out. Now, it does not mean ultimately you would rather hear a person with no knowledge, but it means there will be something that a person without knowledge can come up with. And people with knowledge sometimes make the mistake of only listening to the most ignorant parts of a person with no knowledge. But you have to listen to the creative parts of a person with no knowledge of things too, because they come up with stuff. And you can use some of what you'll say, man, I never thought about that. I could use that.
I want to talk about your composing, and so first of all, as a composer, who are the composers that have been the most influential to your writing?
You know, Monk, Wayne Shorter, Duke, Mingus, from a form standpoint, Jelly Roll. Definitely, Jelly Roll is the first, had the most impact on me when I was younger. When I listened to Jelly Roll Library of Congress recording, and start to realize how he put his compositions together. And then, of course, because I played classical music, man, you know, I analyzed all of the Bach chorales when I was in high school. So I love always Bach's music. It's not possible to not love his music if you're a musician. It's just on such a high level of craftsmanship and of intuition and of, I mean, just everything about him. Beethoven was always my favorite. You know, I wrote my senior term paper was on Beethoven and his music. Shostakovich, you gotta love him. Bartok, I always loved his music. Later I got into Wagner, gotta love and respect him. I got into Haydn, I love Haydn's music. And then, you know, really a lot of the composers, American composers, Copland, stuff like John Henry, Gershwin, Bernstein. After I met him, I loved him. You see, you know, okay. But, you know, right. I got into, eventually, yeah, a lot of composers, but that's kind of my roll call of classical music and jazz. And then the contemporary composers that I hear and play their music, a lot of interesting things a lot of people do. But for myself, you know, I come more out of Jelly Roll, like that kind of root. So, kind of Jelly Roll.
Can you talk a little bit about Blood on the Field?
Well, it was a story about a man and a woman, and the man had slaves. It's interesting. I got the book. I was reading of something the other day about a guy who was a slave trader and got put into slavery. But it's about what is freedom. And you know, the man didn't have a problem with slavery. He was okay with it. He didn't want to be a slave. So the woman was trying to teach him how to not be so myopic in his vision. And for him to be free, he was going to have to embrace the totality of his situation. And she taught him what it took to be free. And so she sang in a low, deep voice, and it was Cassandra Wilson sang it. She's from Mississippi. I'm from Louisiana, so I always loved that connection in her. She's so professional, and she knew all her parts and could play the piano. I wrote difficult parts for her, and Miles Griffin played the man. The woman's name was Leona. That's my grandma's name, and the man's name was Jesse. And I had Juba in there. It's just stuff from that kind of what I was saying, the kind of African American. I was putting the West and the East, putting everything together. You know, the old, the ancient wisdom, this very circular, with the kind of wisdom that goes one way. There's a lot of mythology in it, Blood on the Field. And I did a lot of research in the Schomburg, looking at all the old slave modes, and I used some of the more. I was doing the modes the way they would do it. Tried a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. I mean, I love all of your music, but that's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I had old James Carter. A lot of people on that record I had met when they were kids. You know, even though I don't know how old I was then, 33 or 2 or 33 or something. A lot of them I had met when they were 14 and 15, and we were up in there playing that kind of music. You know, it was kind of funny. It's not what you would expect us to be doing.
Yeah, I interviewed James for the same series. I also interviewed your brother, Branford, and I interviewed Rodney Whitaker. Let's see here. So another person that we have in common is Bob Hurst.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so I played with him. I was a teenager, you know, when I played with him. I'm sure there's some other folks that we share in common. Andre Hayward.
Yeah, man, we got a lot of people. You know what I mean? Jazz.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of people doing it, but we know each other. You know, I mean, we know each other.
So there's a lot of stuff going on in the country right now, and so it's like we came out of the coronavirus stuff, which never really left, but then it became, of course, overpowered by these racial riots and protests that we're experiencing right now. And again, all the while, the pandemic has sort of seemed like it has waned, but then seems like in some places it seems like it's resurging. It's kind of it's just a different world. I mean, like overnight, dozens and dozens of gigs that I had booked were all canceled. The Ohio State Jazz Festival annual festival was canceled. All of this stuff was canceled, and I know everybody is dealing with it. The best that they can. One reason why I started doing these interviews is because I wanted to still be able to stay connected with musicians in particular, with people that I love and respect, people that I admire, and have some conversations and maybe put a light spot, there where people could, at least while they're listening, could be, not tuned into the 24-hour news cycle.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you have anything you want to say about that. I don't really have a question there, but what are some things that you've involved yourself with during this time while there aren't very many gigs?
Well, with Jazz Lincoln Center, we put 180 things up online. I mean, we're working. So we're presenting people, we're putting up concerts, we have to stay and play. We have to stay alive.
Right.
Our halls are dark. We're not making anything. We're trying to trying to keep as many people working as we can, and we're trying to be true to our mission and our vision. This has tried us, and it's going to really try us in this year. You know, we're in a very, very tough position, but that's the position we're in. So it's like I saw my daddy in a tough position for years. But he figured out how to work and feed us. I remember one time he was playing at the Hyatt Regency and people were talking over him. I was sitting next to him on the piano stool. Then I was a teeny, maybe 15. I'd been going this gig since I was 2 or 3 years old. I was told him, you know, messing with him. I said, man, you don't get tired of people just absolutely talking over you and not listening to you play at all. And my daddy looked at me and he said, do you get tired of eating? So we both started laughing. You know, I would just sit there with him, man. I said, and then I just got quiet. He just kept playing. You know, he's playing like in an atrium where people just, you know, walking and socializing. And this is a hard time, man. And it's for the nation. We don't have good leadership on any level. It's not just the president. Okay, we like to talk about the president. That's just ridiculous. It don't even make sense to talk about him because he's more reflection on us than on himself. Okay, that's like you go to somebody's house and their children go to the bathroom on the table. Don't look at the children. You know what I'm saying? I mean, don't look at them. I don't know what to say, man, about none of us. Republican Party, Democrat. I mean, it's nothing to say, man. It's not on the left or the right. The local governments. I mean, we just, you know, the world is seeing us. You know, we don't look good. But let's just go into a slogan about how we the greatest. We need some adults to walk up into the room. It's like with the music. It's like what I was telling you at a certain point. It's possible for your intellectual community to be corrupted, and then everything that comes out their mouth, they're intellectual, so they're figuring out how to bullshit you in a different way that sounds good. Yeah. And I mean, you know, they on both sides of the equation. All the so-called learned and man, you know, one thing about history is you think it's going to be one thing, but it's something else. You don't know what it is. Now, this reminds me of the 1850s. And they even had a little movement, the anti-slavery movement in the country before the Civil War. But the thing about history is it doesn't, just because they did that in 1857 don't mean what we're going to deal with now. We're going to see what our country is made of. Now, this system could just be at the end. Our political processes are all corrupt. Our financial systems have all been corrupted. We have a large enough economy, but we're struggling. We don't have any integrity. Our art system is filled with pornography that we give the kids. Our religious, I mean, that speaks for itself. We got evangelicals following a guy that don't even, somebody asked him, is that your Bible? He said, this is a Bible. Some of this stuff, man, you got to just laugh at. And it's not just him. You know, it's not, I don't want to reduce it to him because I don't want people to think that I'm saying something about the right. It's a level of corruption in everything. But you know, the right, the Republican Party has put itself in a terrible position. They're just following somebody who's not even a Republican. Let's see, man. I mean, a Democratic Party, what can we say about us? It's an embarrassment. Don't look left if you're looking for solace. Because you're looking at the same person when you look left. They're just not as brazen as the right. We need something to come up out of the people, and we're gonna see if it does that. And it's gonna have to be like a kind of a total relooking at all our systems and remaking them. And I don't know if we're up to that, but we're gonna see. It's like what you have to do with your playing. You know, when you realize you can't play, you have to start working on fundamental things. And it's not easy. You know, there's a decade right there. That's 10 years you're looking at.
Right.
Damn, I can't really play blues. That's 10 years. I don't know how to write for this ensemble. There's 6 years. Yeah. I'm rushing. There's 13 years. You know, I don't know how to hear. There's 25 years. So when you're looking at making changes, I need to find a way to play quarter notes instead of always playing 8 notes. There's 7 years. You know, I could go on and on about things and the amount of time they take. Like we were talking about education and the music. I need to learn to hear music in the 1930s. There's 4 years. I need to figure out what Paul Robeson was about and connect it to what I think. There's 2 years. You know, that's 2 years now. That's not 2 years at 20. So I think we're going to see if we have the will to actually correct what we have and turn it into a democracy. And do our wealthy people have the insight to actually reconstruct a system in which they don't get to keep all the money? And do we have the type of social vision to make education free and equal? And are we going to disconnect people's health care from their job so that if you become unemployed, you still have health care? And are we going to figure out how to create a lower class economic infrastructure so that we don't have ghettos, but everything revolves in a circle, in an ecosystem, and people at the bottom of the society can also function in a healthy financial environment? These are all the type of large questions we have to ask ourselves, instead of trying to figure out how intellectual think tanks can make it so that people can't vote, or how we can figure out how to milk the last dollar out of prisons, or fight over who's going to sell candy to kids in the school day, and all kind of ridiculous stuff that goes on out here, man.
Yeah, I've been advocating for a long time taking third-party candidates more seriously and trying to give them more time. So, for instance, you know, we're nearing a presidential election. If there were some viable third-party candidates, not that they necessarily would get enough votes to actually be elected, but if they were on the same stage for these debates, then some of their ideas could actually cause the Democrats and the Republicans to actually have to address those things. Because a big issue that we have today is we don't listen to each other. And if you were to watch the news, and say if you got the Democratic person, you got the Republican person, and they're talking at each other, and they have their scripted talking points, and their talking points don't change one iota when they're talking to each other. It's like they ignore each other. They just say the same talking points, and evidence that they're not listening is they'll go on to a show later on that day or in a week, and they're still saying the same stuff without having even adjusted for this conversation that they just had. So there's no attempt to change. It's almost as if each party has become so entrenched in sort of beholden to who they think is going to vote for them that they won't even come to the middle and cooperate. And it seems to me that some third-party ideas could break that up, but the way that we do these elections would have to change in order, for that to even be a possibility.
Yeah, well, we need to change. I mean, I agree with that. It's like what you do in your personal life. People say they hit rock bottom, they're getting high, or they're alcoholic, or they have anger management issues or something, and they say, man, I hit rock bottom, I had to change. We need to change. Yeah. Like, we need to change.
Yeah, here.
I need to change. So I'm not just looking at us. I need to change with something I'm doing. We need to change. So you've had so many amazing moments performing awards, presidents giving you awards and Pulitzer Prizes and all kinds of, you've had so much just wonderful, amazing stuff. And I mentioned before all of these honorary doctorates. What were some of if you had to present a few highlights, either performing or just
big moments that happened. It could even be moments that weren't necessarily on the stage, but just something that was like a critical thing that happened that changed the way that you perceived things and really changed your trajectory?
You know, I mean, a lot with musicians, just, you know, first I had the opportunity to play with so many great musicians. It's Earl and Riley, Wycliffe Gordon and Wes Anderson. All the musicians I play with now, with the great trumpet section with Ryan Kaiser and Kenny and Marcus, Carlos. I mean, I played so many gigs. It was fun. Played with great orchestras, great conductors. I have so many I can't. Play with Sarah Vaughan, with Betty Carter, with Sonny Rollins, Art Blakey, with Max. Hung with Elvin a lot. I loved Elvin like a father to me. You know? Played with original members of Duke's band. That was great. It's literally too many to. I remember Human Things. The gigs, every gig has been like a blessing. I mean, so many gigs, just even with the septet years ago, people were just clap, you know, just. And with the big band, we've had so many good years where just even for us, we finished tours and we just say, damn, we're not disgruntled a lot like normally. We even comment on how we're not as dysfunctional as normal, you know, our bands can be. We don't have that much. We basically get along, and we even say it. And I haven't been in a band my entire life since I was 12. That's a lot to say, you know. Mm-hmm. I think, man, a lot of things with people, parents and kids, and schools and teaching. I had a lot of experiences, man. I had a period where I would go through like all the worst schools in America I would go to. And you know, I'd be teaching kids and they'd be struggling, but I would tell the teacher or something. I went through a period, I don't know why, where I would tell I would be talking to the teacher, man, these kids are so hard, let's get through to them. And I said, you're gonna see, man, for some reason, when I'm talking to these kids, when I put that hand on them, and I start to treat them with a certain type of humanity and a feeling, a lot of the kids are just scared because their neighborhood and what they're dealing with. You're gonna watch how kids are gonna cry. I had a period where kids would just cry, man, because they're so anxious just to have a man not come to them with an aggressive kind of predatory thing and just put that hand on them and relax them. At first they knock it off. Then it starts to weigh on them. It's a spiritual thing. Yeah. So I have many, you know, instances I could think of like that. I remember once backstage at Orchestra Hall in Chicago, it was a group of kids that was having a hard time. And a friend of mine brought them to the gig. You know, they came in like, wow, y'all played in this hall. I was talking to one of the kids. He was saying, yeah, they're in this gang and they, you know, this and that. There was one of my young guys, I did kind of big 16, but I was just looking at him and I was vibing with him. He started to tear up. You know, I mean, so I just was like, I told him, no, ain't nothing wrong with getting full. We just got to like a kind of thing. It was a vibe. Like, okay, man, you know, you here. You know, I lost track of him, man. I mean, but I mean, that was like a thing. Another time I was playing a gig, man, I looked up, it was like maybe 30 parents and like, this like 11:30, I finished a gig, I'm teaching kids, and it was for some reason, this one night, it was a lot of kids, 33, 34 kids. And their parents stayed there with them till like 12:15, 12:20 after a gig. I taught everybody who was there. Then me and Frank Stu got in the car and drove to the next place. And, you know, I got stories like that all around the world, man, stuff that happened, things that people did, parties we went to, stuff we played, playing the street late at night, dances, getting people open their restaurant, we playing music. In all kind of places, man. Being in Eastern Europe when I was 18 or 19, meeting with some other college kids, talking about communism and racism. Just all. One day I might write a book about it. I don't know, man. It's been a lot of experiences.
Okay, I'm going to ask you kind of a question that's going to seem a little random. I want to ask you about hobbies. Do you have any hobbies?
Not really. I used to play ball. I was kind of, mediocre ball player, but good for a musician. I always talk stuff to kids and go to their high school and beat some up in ball if they didn't play. Chess, I'm really sad chess player, but I play chess. Sometimes we run up on our friends from Russia, Igor Bootman. Russians, they grew up playing chess, man. They'll tear you up with some shit. So I play around with chess. I mean, music is my hobby more than anything. I think mainly chess and reading and playing ball. That was my hobbies.
And I have to admit that I think this is the first time I've ever seen you without a suit on.
I only wear suits on gigs, so actually most of the days I never have a suit on. When I go to a gig, I got to be clean. I got to know.
Yeah, and that was actually something that influenced my father also, was that you were always dressed so immaculately, so clean. And it seems like I read somewhere or was watching an interview that you did where you were talking about a sort of routine that you have before the gig, where you're ironing your clothes.
Right.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I iron my vine. Yeah, I always iron a suit. And those suits, hey man, we got attacked for 15 years for having suits on. So you gotta realize it's like a lot of investment in you not having a suit on. And that meant something. I don't know. It signals something. But yeah, I like to iron and just relax. I always say if I'm at a venue, if they have a good iron, give me a good iron and the ironing board, I'm okay.
Yeah. We're both Libras. My birthday is October 17th.
Okay.
And of course yours is the 18th. Yeah.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting. And actually, I knew that from years ago that your birthday was the day after mine. But I was reminded of it when I interviewed Nicholas Payton. And we were talking about birthdays, and he's a Libra also, and then we were talking about Coltrane, and he was like, oh yeah, and Wynton's birthday is on the 18th, on October. So I thought that was I wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, man.
And then the last thing I was going to say is now, and this is not an instrument that I play very well, but. So I got this trumpet from Dwight Adams, who's been a great friend of mine for a lot of years. And so we exchanged instruments. I gave him a saxophone, and he gave me a trumpet. And so what we were supposed to be doing is we're supposed to be doing like Skype lessons, where he's showing me,
the trumpet,
showing me some trumpet stuff, and I'm showing him some saxophone stuff. He's got kids, and I've got my son, and my son early on he picked up a trumpet and he started playing some notes at it. He was like a year and a half or something, and then I was like, well, if I start learning trumpet, then maybe I can at least be a little ahead of him. So
you look good with it though. You got a good. You're carrying it right. It looks good.
Well, I know how to hold it.
I know how to good with it. That's a large part of it.
So this is a French Besson. Now you've been playing. Can you talk a little bit about the horns that you play? Because I know that you were pretty involved in the design of those instruments.
No, not really. It's made by Dave Bonnet. I've been playing them for a long time, but he designs it. I just play it. I mean, I don't really. He knows his business. I stay out of his business.
Yeah.
And I was 23 or 20, young, 23, 24 when I started playing his horns. And he's still out here. Me too. He's still out here.
Yeah. Like there's the big sort of. It's like a lot of metal connecting, like in here.
Yeah.
And it seems. Is it a heavier? Is
It's heavier,
horn?
yeah. It's heavier. But he has a way he
Okay.
designs it. I don't know about it technically, but it's heavier,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, is there anything that you want to say that I didn't ask you about? Maybe
No,
a
man,
final word?
I'm good. You know, we had like we playing tunes. We had our conversation. We're gonna next time we play that Cherokee.
Yeah.
But you know, we don't have to make up nothing. We come for stuff. I appreciate talking to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. God bless you and your family, and thanks for your time and your energy.
Man, same to you and yours. Much love, man.
All right, man.
All right, much love. Thank you.
See ya.
Thank you. Thunder.